everybody, welcome back. This week we're going to talk about a really interesting group of artists, and we're going to go way back. We're going back to 1860. Yeah, that's a hot minute ago. And we're going to talk about a group of artists known as the Impressionists. And what they really did is they started a movement called Impressionism. And what it was really about was how, when they were looking at different objects, whether it was the landscape or people or even a still life, how those objects looked within their eye, what colors they saw, how light affected it, what was their general impression of it. So when we talk about these artists, now when we look back at their work, look at this piece, we look back at their work, it seems like kind of old school, kind of this is how it is. This is how people perceived a bridge over a beautiful lake or pond. This is how people perceived it. Back then, this was completely radical. In the 1860s, to get in a show, you had to apply to a thing called a salon. And that was a situation where your work was juried by, some art critics. And if they didn't like your work, it didn't get in there. So this group of artists banded together, and in 1874, they had their own show. Okay, let's talk about this. Having your own show at this time was radical. Getting a group of your friends together and saying, I'm gonna have my own art show, it was considered completely, totally not the thing. So they did it. They had their own art show, and at this art show, people started looking at works like this, and they were saying, that doesn't even look like they finished painting it. It just looks like it just doesn't even look like anything. Some people couldn't even see what it was. They were used to looking at artworks very close up. So until they stepped back, they didn't get the impression of the artwork. And this was very important to this group of artists. This first group of, this piece that we're looking at here is by Claude Monet. He was in that original show, and his artwork was criticized, and basically critics said, this work is unfinished. It's not even done. So, but where you can see in his work where he's really getting an impression is he's looking at all these tones, the colors, how the light affects the colors, what time of day this might have been painted in. Here's another image of a work that he painted. And this is obviously done at a different time of day. This is really important because you can see the same subject matter at a different time of day has a completely different impression, has a different feeling. And that's key to Impressionists. They want to show that possibly this same subject or these subjects could appear differently at different times. They were really concerned about that and wanted to show that, especially Claude Monet. That was the basis of most of his pieces. He painted the same subjects over and over again because he saw them differently each time. That's kind of wonderful. It really talks about the wonderment of looking, of seeing color, seeing light, and noticing texture. And this is really important to what we're going to do today. I'll show you another piece of his, and it's a piece that was painted kind of showing sunlight and how it affects fog. And you can really get the feeling of fog. Look how colorful this fog is. Look at the shadow of Notre Dame. It's got purples, it has blues. This sunlight is coming through and affecting just the air around it. Look at this beautiful reflection on the water. That's the river Seine. It's beautiful. And it's all made up of these small painterly strokes of color. So with that said, we're going to segue and talk about another Impressionist, and his name is George Serrat, and he was really known for this style called Pointillism. He built up all of his works through tiny dots of color, and it's pretty exciting if you think about it. He and who's the other guy? There's another guy. What was his name? Paul Siniak. That's it. So George Serrat and Paul Siniak were two Impressionist artists known for Pointillism, which is like tiny little points of light, points of color, tiny dots of color. So I'm going to show you some pieces done by former OSL students of just the landscape around OSL, and it's pretty exciting. You can recognize the trees and whatnot, all the dots that are used, all these different tones of green, different oranges, tones are all within these. It's pretty exciting because all with dots, they built up these drawings. Look at this beautiful shadow done with the darker green. I love that. Here's another that I really like because you can see the tree with foliage and then without. You can also see the shading on the side of the tree, really beautiful. That's all done with tiny dots. Last but not least, here's another piece. It's really beautiful because you can see the oranges that they started to use to make this tree without the leaves, and that they were starting to make the green of this tree. It's really interesting. Look at those beautiful colors in those leaves. You can just imagine like the sunlight hitting the leaves. It's really evocative. So today, what I'm gonna have you do is you are going to do a composition, and the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna go outside and you are going to collect and find a leaf. I found this leaf. I went for this leaf. I was like, that's my leaf. I'm using that. This big old leaf really spoke to me. So the first step of what you're going to do is you're going to get a piece of paper. You are going to lay your leaf on the paper, and then you are going to trace around it with a pencil. Just very carefully with a pencil. It doesn't need to be dark. You just need to be able to see it, but you're going to follow the line of your leaf with this pencil. The next step that you're going to do, once this has been traced, you are going to, let me just hang this up really quick. You are going to then, and I've started on this side already, you're going to then start to, and I just used marker, but you can use marker, crayon, colored pencil. I just immediately started to do the dots, following the line of this leaf. I just started dotting it in, just making those dots. So I immediately started to do that to fill it in. I still have my leaf nearby as reference, but I'm basically just enjoying myself and dotting it in as I can. So that's what I'm doing immediately. I just start adding dots. Now I'm going to show you the other side because I did start on this earlier so that we could get a little bit further with this. Then I just continued adding dots. I started changing color. I really started to enjoy myself. The important part about this is to just keep adding color. Don't hesitate, dot and add your color. Now let's talk about adding dots. I'm not bashing this paper like this. I'm carefully adding dots where I see it's needed. I'm just taking my time. I'm adding dots. I'm just slowly going and adding dots as I go. Slowly adding it where I see it, and I'm building up the color. You guys are going to be working on gray or blue paper because doing it from white paper is a lot. It's a lot of work. It's a killer. But still keep your leaf nearby so you can still be looking at your leaf and looking at your paper, and keep working and looking at your leaf, but your leaf does not need to exactly match what you're doing. It's supposed to be your impression of it, your feeling of it. So as you're building up your color, use a bunch of different colors. I used gray, I used yellow, orange, I had some red in there, I've got green in there. I used different size markers. So you could use crayon, markers, or colored pencils. Oh, I even used some metallics, just because that's what I had. And keep layering it. Keep having fun with it, because the more you add, the better it starts to look. I'm just dotting and having fun. Just dot it up. Keep adding to it, but keep looking at your leaf. It's really important. Okay, so say you're on Seesaw and you're like, wait a minute, I don't have paper, I don't have markers, I don't have pens. Don't worry, if you have that at home, you could use paper, markers, pens, and get a leaf at your house. But if you don't have that and you're doing this entirely on Seesaw, I will have a picture of a leaf and a template of the leaf. You can use it with your finger on Seesaw and just use the app and just tap on the leaf template that I have for you, and you can refer to the leaf picture that I'll have on there. So you can do that all on Seesaw just using your finger or a stylus. If you want finer dots, you can use a stylus. And the great thing is there's a marker, a pencil, and a pen tool on there with all the colors on the side, so you can do that on Seesaw. I really can't wait to see your work. I'm going to keep working on this and hopefully get further along on it. I'm going to try to put it in here tomorrow, so we'll see. I'm trying to do this over a couple days, so we'll see. But really enjoy pointillism. I'm going to be adding some pictures at the end of George Serrat's piece. His piece that we see here in my awesome color book. And when we see this piece is at the sideshow. So that piece, there'll be some images of that all the way close up. You'll have a far away, a little bit closer, and then super close up so you can see the dots and the work of George Sherrod. Enjoy it. See you next week. Bye.